Welcome to Asia Society Hong Kong Center for our first ever Chinese New Year, Chinese Almanac program. I have been wanting to invite Ken and Joanna to do this program for us for a long time, but I think this is the first time we're going to do our first Asia Society Hong Kong Chinese Almanac program. And this is not the first time we've done it together with Ken and Joanna. Ken Smith and Joanna Lee, old friend, longtime friend of Asia Society, Hong Kong. But this is the first time we are doing it together with Asia Society Hong Kong. So I want to welcome both of them who are joining us from Cole, New York. And thank you both, Ken Smith, Financial Times critic, and Joanna Lee, friends of Asia Society, who have helped us quite a bit with our Mila and a lot of our arts and cultural program this last decade. It's been 9 years since Society Hong Kong opened, February 9th, 2012. And I remember our first program with Daniel Ng and the Octavia Festival, all of that. So thank you both for joining us. And we're a few days from Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is going to be Friday, and we are here Monday talking about the almanac. And there is a long story there, well, short story. This got started in 2009 when I was at the Museum of Chinese America, and you did this for us, both of you, to kick off our annual gala. So I want to thank you both for continuing your support. And this is not the only thing you've done. And I was showing you earlier, Pocket Mencius, you've done Pocket Confucius, Dao De Jing, everything. So thank you. And these are all of my past almanacs that I want to share with you, all the audience tonight, because you guys have been wonderful.
These are ours.
And thank you. And it started in 2009, and over 10 years later, a decade later, we have continued it, started in New York and here in Hong Kong. So thank you both for being part of our Asia Society Hong Kong family. And I know some of our colleagues from around the world, including New York, are tuning in. And I've been dying to ask you all sorts of questions about this year. I know it's been a very, very difficult year for all of us. It's been global. And you guys have been in New York for the last year, almost a year. I've been here and not seeing my family, missing them. But I wanted to kind of really talk about this almanac from how tell us how this year is going to be. I mean, kind of give us a background of the almanac, and also you will get, all of you who are interested in getting copies of the almanac, we're going to send you links to Asia Society Hong Kong store, and you can pick it up at also local bookstores. But turn it over to Ken and Joanna to tell us more about the journey of the Chinese Almanac.
Well, in the big picture, it is, of course, connected to the imperial calendar, the old, very old and traditional way of dividing the year into months, days, weeks, and a structure which works sort of in the reverse of the Western calendar, because instead of being the solar lunar calendar, it's basically the lunar solar calendar. So there are many days that are fixed in a calendar, many that are in flux, depending on the relationship of the heavenly bodies. They also have a very interesting bit where the heavenly bodies connect to the earthly bodies. So in addition to having that calendar, you also have the series of predictions for the upcoming year of what's good and bad for everyone, and which is what the almanac is more or less about, as opposed to individual bits of fortune telling.
I mean, I think we should just think of it this way: the moon as the lunar calendar. It's very simple. You have the new moon, and then you have the middle of the month, the 15th day, which will be the full moon. So the waxing and waning, I mean, it really marks time. And actually that is very important for all sorts of weather, as in predictions, but also apart from that, is that the moon and the sun together, you create the idea of seasons, and with seasons you have planting. So think of it this way: this all started with agrarian activity, agrarian culture. And I think that's good to know, because these days, we rarely even look at the meat or the vegetables as to exactly the ground that it came from. We should always remember, and I think that's why the eco movement and all that makes sense, is that we are now reconnecting. And I think in many ways we have to also quickly say how Ken and I somehow got hooked onto the almanac, but later.
I have to say,
the older history first.
There are many directions that you can get from the big red book, which is what the traditional Honking Tongue edition looks like to the Little Red Book, which is what we did. And I have my story. Joanna has her story. You definitely have your story because you were there from the beginning. And I think it all comes through that what they all agree on is the fact that you have a document that as a calendar is essentially not usable because everyone really internationally, globally works on the modern Gregorian way of breaking down the ideas. But in terms of keeping your culture close, this is definitely kept close. I mean, you have the chain to hang it on your altar at home. So this is definitely something that you do not put away. You keep it at handy when you need it. But in terms of what you really have for everyday life, we kept thinking, are people reading books? No, they're reading Palm Pilots. They're reading iPhones, which sort of led to the shape of this and how we got this. Also, this was much easier. We debuted this at Museum of Chinese America. This was much easier to put on a place setting, you know, at the gala than, of course, this would be. And so throughout the book, I mean, everything that we have is a way that you read it. And today we are obviously not, for the most part, an agrarian society, particularly in Hong Kong. But that's not saying that people don't look at this when they say, do I get a haircut today? Is this a good day to sign my contract? Is this a good day to break ground? Because the funny thing about Hong Kong is when you have a good day to break ground, architects actually use that and construction sites use that even today as a way of sort of harnessing, you know, positive energy and saying, okay, I'm not going to worry about, I'm going to worry about decision making. We're going to do it now and move on to problem solving.
We think of it this way: beginnings are important. The beginning of the Lunar New Year is important. The beginning of starting a shop or opening for business, that's very important. And I'm almost 99% sure that in Hong Kong, everybody looks at the almanac when they actually mark the beginning of a shop, when they actually open or have the opening ceremony. They would even have to pick not only the best day possible within whatever range that they're looking for, but the best hour. So that best hour is when they have their lion dance or when they actually have all the flower displays, just something festive to mark that opening, to mark that beginning. Because if you actually start with the right foot, the right way, the good way, then everything else will be smooth. The idea is to, have life that is smooth sailing.
Well, I'm glad it's very interesting you said that about when I was growing up in Taiwan. I remember my grandmother using it quite a bit, and I never understood. It's almost like her Bible, and now I still don't quite understand it, but I think it just there is a rhythm to it, and not that I follow it religiously, but there is something about the almanac and the Chinese New Year, and I think there's something about the beginning. It's almost like a recipe, and you want to start off in, like you said, in the right foot. And because last year, things have been so awful, so every little bit helps. So talk about a little bit about how you think we can make this year quite better. I mean, every little bit helps. This our little red book. This is quite a different red book, but kind of talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think one of the strangest things, just to get back before we go on, one of the strangest things that we found, this is our 12th year. As you said, it started in 2009. We've done a complete cycle. And I have to say, the last 12 years has been a roller coaster ride anywhere you are in the world. And so what we found very intriguing about this is that the almanac is a very local reading, generally, that people extrapolate into the big picture. So when you think about this particular edition, Kong King Tong, which is in Chinatowns basically around the world, everyone is sort of marking their lives by the astrological readings of Hong Kong, whether that might be specifically applicable to your region or to where you are. And because even in Taiwan, which is not too far away from Hong Kong, the readings are slightly different. But in the grand scheme, it's turned out to be eerily prescient in terms of describing what conditions around the world are, because we have become so closely intertwined as a global community that despite regional and national differences that have been flaring up, we're all basically in the same boat.
Well, not only in the same boat, and interestingly, is that here, well, we all are living here, as I talk to you, in the Northern Hemisphere. So the seasons, as in, we are now in the deep winter or just about to start spring. But in Australia, my friends in Sydney, it's exactly the reverse. So really, it is a very, very different thing. And yet, funnily enough, for example, the idea of the Mid-Autumn Festival, for example, that is still also celebrated in the Southern Hemisphere. It just happens to be very different type of weather. But the idea that people still hold, whatever you call it, the root culture or beliefs of the root culture with them, I mean, that is something that I believe is very, very close to everybody's heart. Really, we do, and I think I'm correct to say that in Asian cultures, the way that we look up to our ancestors, that is one thing that is really kind of in our blood.
Yeah,
yes?
yeah, and true. And the thing is that you look at the almanac in its totality. I married into a family of 1.3 billion people, so yes.
You're one of
them.
them.
Yes, but the thing is, though, that what I find very intriguing about this in terms of the book itself, it's not just the predictions that people look at. I mean, that's why you buy it every year. What actually doesn't change is stuff that's in here that is basically a series of articles like the Farmer's Almanac in the West, articles about everything that you might want to think about, and a way of keeping things from the past that are not, again, truly relevant, but are where we came from as a culture. And if you look at that, from the Qing Dynasty on, basically, it took that type of approach to publishing these little articles that remind you of where you came from.
It's like an encyclopedia in the sense that, for example, the Chinese have a very, very classic 24 stories of filial piety. Just what I had talked about being, good to our ancestors and parents and all that. So for that one, it's already in this book. So the book devoted 24 pages into that. And also, remember, we, a long time ago, were in situations, maybe a century ago, in which certain women, or maybe even certain men, were illiterate. So how do you deal with being able to still understand or be able to tell what is happening? So what happened is here, they started adding lots of beautiful folk drawings. So the drawing will tell you the story.
And so again, when you go back, I mean, in the Qing Dynasty, for example, that was a period of rapid modernization. It was a period when there was a lot of interaction between the Chinese and Westerners, really for the first time in a long time. So there was a need culturally to say, okay, who are we? Let's not lose track of the essence. So it's in there. The same things more or less exist today, but for different reasons. I mean, today things are modernizing so quickly that when things start moving that fast, there's also a blowback for people to reach back into where they came from, and again to reach back as far as they can, and that exists in the middle of America as well as in Hong Kong.
So tell us about, you guys, tell us about this year's the cover. What's the backstory behind that?
Every year we try to source interesting folk art. There
Right.
were a number of years that we would actually commission living artists in certain areas. And I think one of the really fun one, the first one that we ever commissioned, was actually 2017. I'm going to show it.
And this was from an artist in Macau. Yes, exactly. This one and for the appropriate year and an appropriate iconic image of people who grew up in that time, and
okay, it started because I was walking around Portugal in Lisbon and realized that Macau was a Portuguese colony, and for the longest time, clearly, the rooster is kind of the most iconic symbol for Portugal. And I thought to myself, maybe they have something. And so what we did was we found actually a wonderful comics artist, Mr. Cho, who
Right.
actually drew this for us. And this is great. And the reason is that, so this is a chicken guy, a guy in a chicken costume who is actually throwing these wonderful, what do you call it? Sort of sugared olives as sweets. And he would throw it up. And this is a very old tradition, very Cantonese, very Southern China tradition. And we thought, can he do something to make it fun? And what he did was he hid in this picture. And you remember children, and I guess adults also love to play with this game, is that in a picture, try and find all the hidden chickens. And I can tell you there are plenty of them, big and small. And
Right.
so it becomes an interesting counting game.
Yeah, it's kind of the Ninas in a old Al Hirschfeld.
But so
drawing.
that's 2017. We've also had, for example, folk art works, and we used to have a wonderful professor in Beijing who would say, "Oh, I think you should try this province this year and that province that year." Wang Haixia, unfortunately, she passed away, and but. She has given us wonderful, wonderful paper cutting artists, wood carving artists. And then a few years back, and actually that was the year of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. And this is the lady, and I'm going to show it to you. This is a piece actually of embroidery. It's folk embroidery. She would use all these little pieces of cloth and then sew them all together to create a man actually riding a horse. And this lady was such, I would call her a national treasure, but she's definitely a regional treasure of Shanxi, that she was invited to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival to actually demonstrate and talk about her art. And she was how old? Oh, she was 70 something. And so her daughter and her granddaughter came, because it was 3 generations of people continuing the folk art. And I think that's good. And I think we should always now, especially this past year, 2020, I think arts and crafts is great. Making our own bread is great. So there are ways of looking at life more positively and realize that one door closes, another opened. Definitely opened for me for baking. Ken Smith can attest to that.
And so the artwork this year, we try to go really panning, across China and across the diaspora. This piece came from Taiwan, and it's by a team of commercial artists,
Right.
a duo of commercial artists,
Right.
who actually are on the same page in terms of taking iconic images of their life and sort of twisting it, showing the changes that have grown up during their lifetime. This is actually a temple. You want to talk about the temple?
Yes, this is the temple. This is actually, those of you who know Taiwan, it is Tainan, south of Taiwan, the Zhengchenggong Temple, the Koxinga Temple. And that's the interesting thing, Zhengchenggong as in the Ming Dynasty, late Ming Dynasty into Qing Dynasty era. And what was so great is that after doing some more research, we realized that Zhengchenggong actually was half Chinese, half Japanese. His mother was Japanese.
Oh, really?
So I think sometimes we have to remember also that Asia, or even the idea of China, whatever it is, Chinese, there are actually lots and lots that we actually relate to each other. And Zhengchenggong definitely in Taiwan was, he's a deity. I mean, he was worshipped as a deity in basically defending what he was defending, trying to create a force that was actually be able to actually restore the Ming Dynasty. Well, he failed, but he tried. He really tried. And really, it was so fun because we saw this, we were recommended, and we found this duo, Buddy Make Studio of Taiwan, and they are very good because it was kind of fun, and then at the same time it's serious because it really replicated the god, the deity in the middle.
What really drew us to it was the fact that it was an ox, and we were looking for pictures. I mean, we were introduced virtually to this artist collective. But what got us there was seeing how they took these images and cartoonified them, if you will, into sort of non-threatening images. And of course, the ox as a a deity, a protector of the underworld, and a protector of the god here, is of course a very imposing figure, except not here. There was a playfulness that really captured that and brought it as really much more of a populist sensibility than a religious symbol.
But that's what I think is great. It is, we are now looking at how 21st century, I mean, this picture, this entire picture was actually done in the past year. I mean, how we are seeing culture, seeing tradition, and yet also understanding that the modern way of thinking, the modern way of living, there are changes, but the changes still in very much respect, as well as even praise and pay tribute to that culture.
Well, tell us more about the almanac. I mean, you alluded to Taiwan. Growing up, I know how much in Taiwan was used, and also in Hong Kong. But how much is it used in China these days? But I know the Diaspora also kind of, this again was their Bible of how to get things done. But is it used in China these days as much?
Well, it had a rocky history in the 20th century, because I think that one of the few things that the Communist Party and the Christian missionaries agreed on was this was feudal superstition and it should be obliterated. And part of it was driven in the South through much of the years. But after the Cultural Revolution, it really did migrate to Hong Kong, not just for printing, but actually as the business, the publishing business.
Yeah, so the Kong edition, the publisher that we have known from 2009, his father really was not into printing the almanac until the Cultural Revolution, when suddenly there was no more of the supply of almanacs from China, and Hong Kong had to generate its own. Now that's wonderful. Think of it this way, is that Hong Kong then became the bearer of this, and because it was in Hong Kong, the diaspora from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way until now, and we're talking about Singapore, Malaysia, all the way through to Amsterdam, London, Sydney, and we're all using it.
And keep in mind that it was popular in the two places, Hong Kong and Taiwan. It was done in the two places that were by far the most modern part of China at that period. So the modern were the ones who reached back.
The almanac from Hong Kong, they're almost like Greenwich time, like they're the definitive, because as I recall in Taiwan, we used but the Hong Kong version has become the one that defined for all the diaspora use, because China, because of what happened, did not.
You can often find it on the internet there, but there is no real publication industry.
Mm-hmm.
So we will get calls from people just saying, okay, what you have that book, what is it?
Yes.
When do we get married?
We have Beijing friends who said, oh, we searched online, and somehow online the information was all conflicting, because one website says it's good, the other website said it's bad. So they said, please now consult your book. Somehow, and that's another reason why, I mean, lots of people have asked us, why don't you just make this little book an ebook? And we've resisted, because there's something wonderful about touching a book. There's something about that tradition of something that is actually in your hand. And I think that is something that we definitely want to keep doing, because luckily it's a very small book. We mail them to friends everywhere, and it doesn't cost too much postage.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are my gifts to friends for Chinese New Year rather than a red packet. I still do it for the kids, but this is really fun.
They actually fit in a red packet.
A lot of celebrities and companies have starting to order them, and it's a nice. I've always loved it, because I've seen little books of like Irish sayings and all that, and other museums have done that about their own history in a pocket size, and this is our version of it's a pocket size Chinese story. I mean, it is quite dense, so I always love giving this out to friends and family, and so thank you for continuing it. But now let's move on to this year, and what I know last year. We did not get a chance to talk to you, but I heard last year you had an interview with New York Times, and this book is getting a lot of notice. Okay, so tell us what happened last year and what can we expect this year.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
You want to start?
Okay, we also have to here acknowledge our geomancer, Warwick Wong, who actually is based in Hong Kong. Warwick is a retired architect. He did give, Alice, I think your memory is a little bit hazy. I think Warwick, Ken, and I did give a talk at the Asia Society at the Miller Theatre once, but that was a while ago. But Warwick actually in 2020, in late 2019, told us, find a safe place to hide and stay there.
He said basically the first thing was, it's very contentious. Do not engage on a certain level. Block yourself off, protect yourself. Find a safe place to hide. And then he said something later that didn't resonate at the time, only afterwards. He said the first half to 2/3 of 2020 will be a global calamity. And I said, I asked him, do you mean natural disaster or man-made? Because there were a lot of elections going on and a lot of turmoil that was definitely a shift rightward on the political spectrum. And he said, I can't tell, but whatever it is, it will affect everybody around the world, and it's the same thing. And by the end of 2020, we will start to see our way out of it. And of course, we said this in late January in New York, and people were just yeah, okay. And then in a few weeks, we found out exactly what that calamity was. And this was one of those examples, as I was telling you, that yes, the reading came from Hong Kong. It was very clearly based there, but it applied to everybody on some level throughout the world.
So I did ask Warwick for his wisdom for this upcoming year, and I will tell you later, very soon. But Warwick said that the world has become global. So something that happens in one place immediately triggers a response or a reaction in another place. And that's why we now see, in many ways, you can say that COVID was absolutely a chain effect. Wherever it began, it just moved and moved and moved and amplified. And that's one thing that was very disturbing. And I have to say, when we talked about that in January of 2020, we really had no idea that it would end up like Ken and I staying in New York at our home for more than a year and not being able to fly.
Yeah, we came back for a few weeks in January, and we're still here.
Okay, so should I be telling you what Warwick says?
Yes, please. Hopefully something positive, because, like you said, we've all been kind of locked, not traveling for a year, and a global pandemic, and we here in Hong Kong have come through it, I think, better than most. But we all want to know what's going on this year of Ox coming up. What can we look forward to, and what do we have to expect for this year of the Ox?
First thing is that how do we define, is it better or is it worse? And I think that's important. And what we really, really said, and it's important to remember, is that it has to do with each one of us. So we are kind of responsible for what we do. We are responsible for how we deal with things. And he said, this is the year, just like last year, to stay calm. Really, do not pick quarrels. Last year was a year in which he said, don't even try and convince others to change their opinions. This year, I think, and he did say that this year is better, okay? It's clear. This year is better, okay? But now the question is, how do we make it even better than whatever that, that normal or basic foundation is? And he said, stay calm. And also the other one is have a positive attitude on things and think of ways to actually improve yourself. And late last year, I called him and I said, well, all this is happening, what to do? And then he said, come on, you're staying in one place. You're not flying around. Don't you think that you are now healthier? And I said, oh, you're right. I don't have jet lag. I'm eating much, much better. Both Ken and I have lost weight. We actually exercise and take walks in the park because in 2020, we had the time to do so. Before, we used to be so busy. So in many ways, we can say that, okay, there is some little silver lining or something positive one can draw out. And this is one of those.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, in the presentation that we gave at the Miller Theater back with Warwick years ago, someone asked him in the audience, so is next year a good year or a bad year? And he just stood dumbfounded for a couple of seconds. Said, well, good and bad for what? You know, open the book. It's good and bad for something every day. You know, and the waves of that. And it's not about, is it good one day or the next? It is, what are the waves of the universe? What is the pattern? Because you'll see clumps that are very good. I mean, they are essentially glorified weather predictions and metaphysical weather predictions as well. If you have several good days for planting and going out and meeting friends in a row, you understand you can sort of plot what you can do to maximize your positive energy and the energy of people around you. You know, if it says basically, stay home and repair your fishing net and don't go out on the water, that sends a different message. And so basically we've had a full year, I think, of staying home and staying off the water and repairing your fishing nets. That is something that we can come out of on a much stronger level if we can keep that kind of energy focused. And that's, you know, at bottom what the almanac is about. It's about what to avoid and what to maximize in your life. And it's very hard for us to get that kind of picture and objectivity ourselves. We need to have it sort of pointed out to us and have us, each of us, sort of adapt that and internalize it in our own way.
And the other one is to be adaptable. I think this year we've all learned that we can adapt. So many of us are now Zooming each other. Alice, I've been Zooming you a lot, but I haven't seen you live. But however, I still feel that I'm pretty close to you.
Right.
So, yeah. So there is a lot about adapting.
There are ways to connect, and that's why I'm really grateful. In fact, I want to at this time really thank our this Chinese New Year. We're going to do a series of program online. Some of the recorded, some of the live, and we could not do programs like this without the support of Bloomberg. We really Chinese New Year to me is one of my favorite holiday, even when I was a kid until an adult. But even if we can't be with our family, there are still ways of us being together. And programs like this, we're going to do a lot of food related programs, recorded as well as live. And you know, I think you're right. We're adapting to technology. I know we've done a lot of program online, and some of the programs, in fact, today we just are posting a wonderful program online on one of our members, Hallie, and Hallie's family making her favorite Chinese lopakao turnip cake, and you know, 11 years old, and Hallie has done a great job. So there are ways we can come out of this looking at positive. And you're right. As much as we hate being stuck, but there are ways of doing other things and connecting with other people online. And I want to thank again Bloomberg for our Chinese New Year. We're beginning to get questions from the audience, our online audience. Those of you who are can access Slido, type your question in, and I'm reading it. We have one question from Sarah, your friend and mine, old friend Sarah. What has been the reception for your almanac? How popular has it become? You did it. You started it 12 years ago, and in fact, I was just at Kelly and Walsh yesterday, and I see your lineup of your other things along on the table there. So tell us, how successful has the almanac become this last couple of years?
Okay, first of all, thank you, Alice. Without you saying, Joanna and Ken, make a something for me for the table gift of the Museum of Chinese in America, we wouldn't be here.
And
so
then,
thank you, Alice.
And then it was the next year when someone from your shop called and said, well, where are those books? And I said, well, you know, it changes every year. So yeah, where's this year's book? And we had no idea. We thought this was a one-off project for you. We had no idea that it was actually going to be an annual thing. So for several years we did that, and it took off as you would expect, as something very quirky. And the people recognized, and they recognized exactly what we were doing with it in terms of bringing it, you know, literally to people's hands. We didn't realize how much it would take off in Hong Kong. because here it's sort of a specialty gift, and it's in museum bookstores and Amazon.
In America, you can imagine the diaspora, people can't read Chinese, but yet there are so many ABCs. So the American-born Chinese young people might find it interesting. Those people who are supporting the Museum of Chinese in America thought, this is a very nice gift. And this has been now an annual tradition for the museum all these years. Now comes what happened is that we somehow got known elsewhere. In Hong Kong, we realized that younger Hong Kong friends of ours who are of Chinese descent, who say that the Chinese in the Chinese Almanac is very classical. So classical, sometimes they don't know how to interpret it. So therefore, the English version helps. That's one. Secondly, is that people love it as a little gift. So for a number of corporate, charity, and other events, people would have hundreds of copies. Once there were 2,000 copies, people asked us to send them to Singapore, for example. So
yes, investment bank friend of mine.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Right.
And and also we have Bloomberg also has been involved.
Very thanks to Bloomberg.
Our books are supplied there. And also these days with all sorts of ideas of diversity, it is good that we explain a little bit of what I would call, this is sort of very much on the ground, close to the ground wisdom. And so a lot of my friends who are interested in Chinese culture, but who are not Chinese in any way, find it an interesting sort of gateway into understanding these everyday activities.
I mean, when you break down, culture, I mean, basically the commonality around is everyone eats food, everyone has music, everyone has a literature, everyone has a calendar, but it's the differences between, and everyone has a tradition of divination. I mean, in China, divination was there even before there was a written language. And so certainly Western astrologers, every country has looked at heavenly bodies and their relationship to earthly bodies in some way. And so everyone knows the broad concept, just like everyone can play an instrument or listens to an instrument, musical instrument. But it's the differences between the cultures that make the culture.
And we have friends who are Iranian who find it very interesting because that they would then compare what they have in their root culture. Mm-hmm. Indian friends, same thing. So there's been a lot of interest, and we're lucky because almost every single Asian museum that we know carries our book now.
Yeah.
Well, there's a question from the audience. This is a really interesting one. This is Lucia from New York City. Are there any language are there any in languages other than English for the almanac? And you guys, as far as I know, it's only been in English, right?
I'm thinking only English, and part of that I think is the cultural connection between. We've had some inquiries about a Spanish version, because the Spanish certainly there's a broad relationship with the Chinese and Spanish speaking world as well, because they're the two largest linguistic groups across the globe. But then we get into certain other positions of Old World Spanish versus New World Spanish, and that is not our culture to decide.
Yes, I have German friends also asking. So yes, there is some interest, but if anybody wants to help out, fine. Ken and I are a little bit busy just generating the English one. And just think of it this way. The almanac is printed in Hong Kong, and we haven't been in Hong Kong, which means that thanks to technology, thanks to Zoom, thanks to all these social media ways of connecting, we were able to actually arrange everything, design everything, work with our printer. We didn't have a chance. Normally, we would have a chance to actually meet the artists if we were to actually engage them or commission them, but we couldn't get to Taiwan. So everything is just by email.
Sorry, well, congratulations. You guys have another hit on your hand. This is another somebody online, Zara Heslop says, love the almanac, stay calm and carry on. Love it. Good advice. And in some ways, that's kind of what you guys are saying for this year, the year of the ox, is stay calm and carry on. But we're not even the year of the ox yet, another couple of days. But what else can we do to kind of make this year of the ox safe and healthy for all of us, besides staying calm? Anything we can do
Yes.
to make sure that, things are smooth sailing?
Okay. We were actually interviewed, and there was a write-up in the New York Times on January 1st of 2020. Mr. James Barron, who actually had also featured us a number of years back in the New York Times. So I'm just going to read, because I think reading is good. So the entire situation of the world isn't that great. Well, we had already said that. So that's why we needed to do
This is
everything
January
we needed to.
2020 or 2021?
2021.
21.
Okay.
And we should, in our fight against COVID, apply a similar attitude to all matters of the world. Now, think of it this way. Many countries have succeeded. Some countries have not done so well in COVID prevention and fighting COVID. What do we learn from them? And I think it has to do with discipline. Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, think of the level of discipline. And now we've always see that. Now we see a very clear difference between Asia and the West, is the discipline and also the understanding of the entire community, the entire group, whether the individual goes before the group or the group before the individual. Ken, you want to say some more about that?
Well, certainly it's a situation where globally we've never been in a better position for an infection like this to spread. And so at that point, it becomes something that as a global community, it has to be a sort of a unified way of approaching this. And we have not been able to reach that. There's a level of people who still, are removed from this. And it comes down to, what are my individual rights and my sense, opposed to what are the collective responsibilities of society.
So the idea of when you take any action, remember that you're also impacting all the people around you. And so I think that thoughtfulness is also very community building, which is the only way that we can all get out of this together. And so just reading the stories of people who are now forming Facebook groups to help others during the pandemic, all of that is important. And I think that the more that we actually contribute to this type of positive thinking and positive energy, the more positive we get. And I think that is indeed what I would call a spiral up situation. So then everybody benefits. So that's one. The other one is that Warwick did say that, there are positive waves and there are also negative undercurrents. Be able to identify them. Okay. And I think it is good because, if we are very, very observant, you see sometimes things that are sort of heading in the wrong direction. Don't touch them, because this is definitely not the year to try and change the world. This is the year to ride the wave and to make sure that we personally, as well as the community around us, will actually recover.
Well, this is an interesting question from Zara again. What about political polarization? Will 2021 bring more global harmony? We have a new president in the White House, only just got there less than a month ago. And I think the question of harmony, will 2021 bring global harmony? Maybe COVID is part of that. What does the Almanac have any indication on that question?
The only thing that I'm hearing is the following, is that learn to be self-reliant, and also that somewhere there is, I don't want to say God, but there is a sort of elder authority or elderly authority that is actually not necessarily in charge, but that is taking care of things. So there is a level of there has to be some sort of level of trust that the elderly authority will straighten things out. But actually, Warwick did say that he actually was seeing strife. He said that he could see strife, but he could not actually pinpoint where it is. However, he said he did not expect that there would be war. Now, I think between strife and war, there's a huge difference. And in that way, we're kind of lucky. Strife is better than war. So the idea of actually having people brandishing swords in the old way, right? Because if it's the old way, people would be holding swords. Warwick said something about, no, he doesn't see swords.
Yeah. The metal content is not high, strangely enough, in
but
that
it
regard.
sounds like we can still do something about it, right? I mean, it is, being positive. I think being.
Yeah, I think that there's a big difference. There's a big difference in the reading between being self-reliant, which is what he is putting here, and acting like many countries in the world now as being so self-reliant that you ignore the fact that what you do impacts other people. And those are the things that tend to be geared to be smoothed out in the coming months.
Okay, we have a comment from Ying, our friend Ying Chen. Thank you for serving as ambassador of Chinese culture. And congrats for carving out a niche of cultural sharing and exchange. And her question is, does it even matter if the almanac is right or wrong? I mean, in some ways it's about us. I mean, it's a guide. So is there right or wrong to the almanac?
Well, there are different geomancers and they do have different readings. Things that everybody agrees upon is when the festivals are, like the moon festival, the lunar festival. I mean, all those are very clear because that's really written up in the stars. Now, how people then read these, the earthly elements, the heavenly elements, and actually how these sort of interact, there are different interpretations. We tend to see that people, even different editions or different writers or different geomancers, one person would say it's a good day for engagement. The other one would say, oh, it's a good day for weddings. Luckily, engagement and weddings are still, what I would call the general positive side of things. Sorry, my throat is, I talk too much.
And also the situation with that is that particularly in regions where people are looking at the same data, the interpretations are remarkably close. We've talked to the publisher of the Kung King Tong, and he's worked with several geomancers. He said, when you have this, it's either, okay, there could be operational error, human error in reading. There's also an editorial process, because when they get to how much will fit on the page, well, if one day he said, it's a good day for the maiden voyage of a boat. And he said, well, we'll cut that because how many boats are there in Hong Kong anymore? It doesn't fit on the page. Get rid of that one. And so little editorial nipping and tucking will change the reading. And so he has to be very, very conscious of that. But he also tries to go with what is the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture aligns quite remarkably.
Well, the idea of right and wrong is how do you feel about something when you actually enter into that activity? Ken and I know lots and lots of people about signing contracts. Tell them about signing contracts.
Well, one book we really want to do is Great Days in History or Terrible Days in History, and find the reading in the almanac during that day. Was 9/11 a terrible day to begin a long journey? Do not fly. And we want to look through.
D-Day. Was D-Day a good day for digging ditches?
Yeah. So the royal wedding, we really want to see if that was a good day for a wedding. So when we get back, that'll be a project when we get back to Hong Kong.
Okay, we have two questions. One of this question was interesting from Ken. Ken Leshens. How does the I Ching relate to the almanac in terms of the geomancy to which it refer? I mean, we're some of us are, how does I Ching, correlate?
I'm not an expert, but I can tell you that in the almanac, there is always various diagrams that actually tell you about the good and lucky positions. And it is important because the lucky position, whenever you get to the lucky positions, you're talking about hexagrams, which is actually in the I Ching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I think that's sort of the extent of what I know of how much of that actually enters into the calculations. However, every almanac, the Chinese big almanac, every day it will tell you what is the good direction for which activity. if you actually go into those details.
We don't do that in our edition because we basically run out of page, and we try to streamline the information. So there's a lot of things like what period of the day is best, what direction is best. We sort of have cut that out.
And the period of the day is, again, the idea of the combination of whatever you call it, the sun's direction. I mean, all of that has to do with direction and location. And in that way, I think it's a lot more specific. The almanac is really sort of the general everyday book. It's the general everyday book that people would refer to regardless where they are, basically. Clearly, a long time ago, it was just within, one country, one region, but now it's just sort of expanded into the globe.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes left, and some great questions are coming in. In fact, we have a wonderful comment from our friend, Ann DePolis. I love the idea of repairing fishing nets. And yes, adapt is the key word in this pandemic. Adapting. So we are all learning to adapt this year, and I think this last year, and we're going to continue to adapt this coming year. Right now it is a global pandemic. It's something we've never seen before. So Anne, thank you for your question from France, I think, and it's been a long time since we saw Anne, and we look forward to traveling again. And so any prediction, I mean, not just prediction, but I know this first half of the year, we're all going to be pretty much grounded. But what is, tell us about the light. I want to end this on a positive note. What are the light at the end of the tunnel that we can look forward to for this year of the ox? I'm doing everything I can to kick off the year of the ox in a positive way, wearing red, doing everything I can. I'm cleaning right now. Making sure that year of the ox come Friday, we are off to a good start. So give us some advice on how can we make sure this coming year is going to be, if not smooth sailing, at least less of the storms. So tell us, how can we prepare for this coming year?
Clean, as well as trim, as well as streamline. These are things that modern world and modern living does not allow us to do often. And if we have the time, please clean. I mean, clean is very important. There's a reason why this is this big tradition of cleaning before the new year begins, because you really want to start spick and span in the kitchen, because, you want to make sure kitchen god is happy and everybody makes good food. And I know that everybody is now learning to make their own lobago and everything else, because now we have the time to do it, and why not? That's the first one. And then the second one is that trimming, and really, Ken and I were lucky. We rarely had the time to be in New York to throw things out. And we managed to throw things out and to clean and get rid of things that clearly were in the back corners of somewhere that should have been out a long time ago.
Yeah, this
and
year,
having that, you have clarity, and that's the important part. How do we achieve clarity? Because with clarity comes calm and peace, and with calm and peace, you have that better health, mental health as well as physical health.
This year in particular is a time to get rid of the previous 12 months. So we're very much looking forward to that element of the new year.
Well, last year, I have to say, because of COVID, I discovered Marie Kondo, and I saw all her shows on Netflix, and I started the cleaning and the purging process. And I feel very light this year, and I'm ready to begin the year of the ox in a lighter mode. So I highly recommend. There are a lot of great shows on Netflix to help you get rid of things. And my sister would be laughing at me right now watching it in Virginia, that I have actually taken her advice and start purging and cleaning. So I think that's a really good advice, but also in some ways keeping our mind informed. And that's why I'm really grateful that you guys are, we can talk about this. 12 years, I can't believe 12 years after when you first came up with one, we're still learning from the almanac, and we're still learning. And this is another thing that it's so exciting this last year with Asia Society, and not just Asia Society in Hong Kong, but everyone globally. We've gone online, we're learning from each other, and it's lifelong education, and it's been really fun, and we continue to learn, and we're going to continue learning. And I want you to come back and talk about other your new publication. Tell us what other things you're working on besides the almanac, because in fact, I'm sending the Pocket Manxious. I discover some new friends who are also descendant of Manxious, and I'm looking forward to sending Simon and others this book. So tell us what are the projects that you are working on now besides the almanac, and you guys, first time in a long time, you guys are together. And you are, like you said, you can still get work done. So tell me about the future project. What are some of the stuff that we can look forward to in the coming year?
As every year that we actually made some money on the almanac, we actually put it back in to print a new book. So we have now finished our Dao De Jing in 2 volumes, or it could be the Dao Jing, depending on which order you want to read. And we now have the 4 classics.
The 4 Confucius classics, of which Mencius is one of them.
Yes, and so that will be the next thing we do when we get back to Hong Kong will be actually to get the slipcase so you can have all 4 classics in the same hand. And after that, we have a couple other projects coming up. So right now, we're currently working on the 36 stratagems, which is, I like to call it the bullet points for the art of war. All war is deception, and this is that, pegged to elements in Chinese history that...
Well, another thing I would recommend, you guys talked earlier about the 24 filial pieties.
Yes.
That is also a good one. And in some ways, I wonder if you guys can work that into a children's book. Because when we immigrated to the States, my mother, we have a set of 24 filial piety as children's book. And I have always thought that would be really great to be adapted so that I can share with my niece and other young people. The 24 filial piety series are really fun. I remember reading it as a kid and just enjoying it. It's kind of almost like our version of Hans Christian Andersen. So yeah. I hope that is another project.
We have thought about that. We need to find the right
format. Guys to think about it, because children's book, we find that, and I feel so bad for the kids out there this year and being stuck. But one thing, not just children, but we're all reading a lot more. But pocket-sized filial piety book might work really well. So planning another C for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, we are now in number 9 of the 36 stratagems, so we are 1/4 way through. It takes years. It's actually been a number of years. These take years because we would make one version of a translation, think that it worked, and then a year later look at it again and say, "Oh no, we have to start all over again."
And it also takes not just that translation, but to pore over Chinese history and go through, pull out Sima Qin and read and find out exactly where that came from in history.
Chapter 8, middle of chapter 8, all these historical stories we try to actually then add onto the 36 stratagems. And it takes a lot of time to verify them. But that's another nice thing, because in some ways, we are actually constantly learning.
Great.
So after we have the translation, the next step is to read 20 pages of Sima Qin and try to distill it in 1 page in this size. It's a little bit tricky.
Well, you guys, anybody can do it. You guys can do it. And one of the wonderful things about, I think back about 9 years ago, when we did all these wonderful programs on the music, and I can't thank you guys enough. The arts and culture and the education programs that both of you have helped us. And even when I was at MOCA, I'm forever grateful, because it's like products like this, a project like this is really important. And now that I have a 7.5-year-old niece, 8-year-old, we want her to be interested. And these things, whether it's Chinese, diaspora, or Westerners, this is a really easy way to understand, kind of like Chinese culture 101. But there is a lot of depth, and I know both of you have done a lot of research, and as well as translation, and making it very accessible and digestible for an audience who may not be that familiar with it. But it is really fascinating, the origins, and also it continues to be part of our lives. So because of tonight's program, I got my hair cut over the weekend. I'm wearing red in your honor. And part of it is because growing up, I just love Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year reminds me of my grandmother. And tonight I have some friends over for a pre-Chinese New Year dinner. And it's Chinese New Year is about celebrations, about family. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we can't be with our families, but we can still do programs like this and we can still connect. And I know some of you will be doing your Zoom Chinese New Year dinner with your family and friends from all over the world. And I want to thank you all for being with us tonight. And I want to thank you both and because the reason I mentioned this, tomorrow we're going to do our 9th anniversary program with a members only program. And we're digging up photos. It's 9 years ago, Asia Society Hong Kong opened its door to the public in February 9, 2012. And 9 years ago, we were doing pre-opening celebrations and you guys were there and you guys are still with us. And although we can't be together this year in Hong Kong or New York, we're together via Zoom. So thank you for being a friend of Asia Society Hong Kong. And those of you who are joining us online, we really, really appreciate your support and keep tuned. Right now, again, I want to thank Bloomberg. Without Bloomberg, this year's Chinese New Year celebration would not be possible. We're doing a lot of fun programs online, including this program, which will be rebroadcast, and we're going to share with our friends at Bloomberg. But it's I know it's not the best. It'd be great to be with each other in person, but it is still the next best thing. And Chinese New Year, it is a time for celebration, harmony, and things could be a lot worse. And we are alive and well. Vaccine is around the corner. Some people have already gotten it. I hope my parents get it soon. And in Hong Kong, I think it's after Chinese New Year, we'll hear more about the vaccine. And I hope in New York, both of you will also be getting your wonderful news about vaccine. But kind of great advice. All right, I'm going to save the last word for the two of you. Piece of advice for us to get through the year of the ox 2021.
Think positive, stay calm. And also another part is that while keeping your spirits up, remember that the person who actually benefits most is the person whose spirit is nourished, which is yourself. So take good care of yourself, because in the end, we need to be here for ourselves and for people around us.
Yes. I think to go through and keep very good care of yourself, but also consider yourself part of the community.
Keep the spirit up, and we need each other. And I think the world, there's a lot of stuff we can still do. And please, there anything that we can do, Asia Society is part of your a family, and check in, and not just here in Hong Kong, but globally. I am so proud and to be part of the Asia Society Global Family. We have a new president, and the Asia Society Global Network is stronger than ever. It's not just here in Hong Kong. We're doing Chinese New Year programs. I know our colleagues in New York, our colleagues in Texas, and other centers are also celebrating the spirit of Chinese New Year with us. So everyone, please stay healthy, stay safe, and happy and safe year of the ox. And the same to you both.
Happy Chinese New Year. Happy Lunar New Year. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.